My name is Dot Butler, and I'm the program manager for the Winchester Coalition for Safe Community. And about a year and a half ago, one of the coaches came and asked me to do something on, we were talking about disordered eating then, but about athletes and nutrition and what they really do need and what we should be fueling everybody with. So this past August, Winchester Leads had the program. Winchester Leads is a combination of captains of teams, class officers, officers of clubs and so forth. So we met in August. Sarah made the same presentation, but she didn't, I don't know, Sarah, do we have more here tonight than you had then? Or close to it?
In August, where were we? Trying to remember which room we were in.
We were in the auditorium.
I think probably a little bit more.
So,
It was a much
which
bigger
was
space.
great.
Yeah.
And then I always like to have the same messaging heard by parents as we do with the athletes, since you guys go to the grocery store more often. And just so that you really can keep the conversation going about the importance of what you should and shouldn't be doing. And it really isn't that. It's more suggestions that Sarah's going to give you. So then I still wanted to keep it going, and I asked the student council to work with me in this event and getting you guys here tonight, which I'm really happy. I know some of the teachers offered extra credit, which was very helpful. I don't know how many of them did, but you know, if it works, it works. That's how I have to look at it. So we have Aiden, Michaela, Georgia, and Mia. They have worked with me on this for a few months. I'm very proud of what they've done. And it just goes to show you that, you know, peer-to-peer sometimes is more effective than with the adults as well. So Sarah McGowan, who works at Winchester Hospital. She lives here in Winchester with her family. Is a dietitian, did I say that correctly? Yeah. And, you know, she gave us some great tips before. I have a bag over there. I want people to take, can you just grab one? When I sent it to Lithocraft, I thought I was going to get flyers. I got these really look like placemats. But anyway, I would everybody take one of these home, and you know, as a reference point to what she's going to be speaking about tonight, because this isn't.
I'm going to unroll one. This isn't in it, but I can also send this as something you could print later. But let me unroll one just to use it too. So there's 3 examples, and I'll show this again at the end because we'll talk a little bit about it. But 3 examples. They print it out as placemats, but essentially it's sort of a lighter day of exercise, a harder day, and a very hard day. And we'll talk more about what it is. So grab one of these at the end.
So thank you guys for working with me. I'm really proud of what you've accomplished. And welcome everybody. And the floor is Sarah's now, and there's a lot to tell you.
Thank you, guys. All right, nice to see so many of you here. Can you guys hear me all the way back there? Okay. Thank you, Dot, for the introduction. My name is Sarah McGowan. I'm a dietitian. I live here in town. I've been a dietitian for almost 15 years. I spent about 10 years at Brigham and Women's Hospital. And as dietitians inpatient, it's a very different job than outpatient. So inpatient means you're working with patients who often are super sick. You see them for a very short period of time. You are part of the team of people who helps them, and then they get better and they go home. You never really see them again. Or if you do, it's because they got sick and they came back. So outpatient, so now I'm up at Winchester Hospital, and I'm doing outpatient. So clients come in to me, usually with a specific concern. Things like weight loss, weight gain, food allergies, and one of my favorite things is patients who come in looking as an athlete for specific help. Either how do I get enough protein? How do I get enough fluid? Why do I feel so tired at the end of my day? Food allergies and getting enough nutrition while an athlete, all sorts of questions. So I get to see them, work with those patients, send them out back into the world to do their sports and have them come back and hopefully see the progress. And one of my favorite clients is our student athletes. And I have a lot of athletes coming to me from Winchester, come in as clients and say, I need some help with this. So I'm hoping this will help a bigger group and answer some of these questions. Because there's a lot of myths out there about nutrition in general, and especially with athletes. So stop me along the way if you have questions about something I already said or something on a slide, okay? So what you eat has a powerful effect on your ability to perform at your best. There's a recent BC hockey coach had this quote, "Too many athletes show up for training, but they don't show up for meals. They may as well not show up for training." So his point is if you're showing up for training and you haven't eaten, you haven't fueled the right way, whether overfueled, underfueled, you're not getting as much out of that training as you could as if you showed up fueled the right way. So if you're training really hard, your performance at your game is going to be better. If you're training at a lower level, that's going to show up at your game or your race. So his point was, if you're not also showing up for meals and paying attention to your nutrition, your games and your races are going to show. So I have some questions along the way to just give you a sense of how much you know, and stop me if you have questions about them. So if you're stopping for fast food on the way home from an away game, your best choice for your recovery meal is chicken Caesar salad, a cheeseburger, or a burrito with the works, rice and beans and chicken. Any A's? Any chicken Caesar salad? B, cheeseburger? A cheeseburger? Or C, burrito? Yes. So C has everything you need. It has your carbohydrates, your protein, and your fruits and veggies, okay? So there's nothing wrong with a chicken Caesar salad or a cheeseburger. I'm not a dietitian who's going to stand here and tell you that there's a food you can't have or that there's a bad food. I don't believe in bad foods. But there are better foods, and there are foods that fit better for certain times. So after a sports event, if you're having a combination of carbohydrates and protein, that's your best bet, okay? So do you guys know what a carbohydrate is? Sort of. Yeah, bread. So the two things we're going to talk about the most are carbohydrates. We'll touch on protein and then fluid. So carbohydrates are, yes, bread. So it's your bread, your rice, your pasta. Fruits are a carbohydrate. So this example, the wrap would be a carbohydrate. The rice is carbs. The beans have some carbs and protein. And then even the guacamole has a little bit of carb because it's a fruit. Okay, it's mostly fat, but it has a little. And so you've got protein in your chicken. And then your salsa is some veggies. So this is a really well-rounded meal. So it has carbs and protein. So this is a really well-known research study that looks at how carbohydrates are replacing depleted glycogen stores. So before I tell you about the study, I want you to tell you what glycogen is, okay? So when you eat carbohydrates, so again, it's the rice, the beans, the pasta, the bread, the cereal, the fruit, that carbohydrate is broken into sugar. Okay? Your body uses sugar all day long. You're using it right now while you sit here to think about what I'm talking about, to sit up in your chair, to walk around. You're using sugar all day, okay? But you don't eat 24 hours a day, right? You take periods of time during the day that you're not eating. You have breakfast, you have a couple hours, then you have lunch and so on, okay? If our body needed sugar all day long and didn't have a way to store it, we'd feel really sick really quickly. So when you get up in the morning, you have a bagel, let's say. You have carbohydrates, you have a cereal or a bagel. Some of that sugar is used to replace the energy you use to sleep. And then some of that sugar is used, it's tucked away and stored for later, and that's called glycogen, okay? Think of it like a bank. You take the sugar from the food that you're eating, you use a little bit, and you store the rest in the bank, and that's glycogen, okay? It's stored in your liver, but in this case, we're really talking about it's being stored in your muscles. So you're using the glycogen stored in your muscles all the time. You're pulling it from your muscles to use it. When it gets really low is when it's time to eat again, okay? So the muscle glycogen is what you're using for energy. So in this, does that make sense? Okay. So in this study, the athletes were broken into two groups, and they were asked to exercise to the point of exhaustion, okay? They were then given either a very high carbohydrate diet, kind of like that burrito we were just talking about, where 50 to 60% of the meal was carbohydrates, or they were given a high protein and fat diet, which might be that cheeseburger or that chicken Caesar salad. And then their muscle glycogen was measured again over the course of the next 5 days. So look at the patients who were given the high carb diet. So this is hours right here, okay? Within 5 hours, their glycogen levels had gone way back up. And by 24 hours, so one day, they're almost back to where they started. The protein and fat diet, even by 5 days out, they never recovered their muscle glycogen stores. So again, they never recovered the energy that they need to store in their muscles to then perform again, okay? So how many of you do some sort of tournament where you're doing an event 2 or 3 days in a row, or 2 events in a day? I see some hands. So if you are eating after your first, what sport are you guys doing 2 days in a row? Soccer, okay. Baseball, any kind of tournaments, right? Soccer, baseball. Let's say you have a soccer game. The end of the soccer game, you choose a cheeseburger, okay? You're not getting enough carbohydrates. The very next day, 24 hours later, you play another game. Your energy levels are down here, where if you choose that high carb meal, you'd be back up here. So how do you feel that second day when you start your practice or your game with the same energy as where you ended the day before? So if you can replace the carbohydrates that you used during your games, you can start the next day in a better place, okay? Or if you're having 2 practices in a day, does anybody's sports do a morning and an afternoon practice? Not yet, okay. But even a practice 2 days in a row, if you're working hard on a Monday afternoon, and then you go home and you're choosing a higher fat, higher protein meal that's not enough carbs, and you try to do it again Tuesday, your energy levels are gonna just go down all week long, okay, until you take a day off. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, the night before a game, you should carbo load by eating pasta or other carb-rich foods for dinner. Yes, the pre-event dinner is the week's most important meal. You guys have pasta dinners before games sometimes? Don't bother, training is more important than food, or every meal should be carb-rich so you can train at your best. C, thank you. Every meal, because every single time you're having a game or a practice, your muscle glycogen levels are depleted. They're gone, or they're on low, and if you don't replace them, they're not gonna go back up for your next practice. And so all of your meals as athletes should be about 50% of carbs. At the very end of this, I'm gonna show you an example of what a day looks like so that it's a little bit more concrete. When I'm telling you 50%, you know, a lot of my clients say, what does that mean? What does my breakfast look like? What food should I be eating? So I'll give you that example at the end. All right, another study was done, this is similar to the first one, but this was looking at muscle glycogen levels 3 days in a row, and these patients were running a long distance. They were running 10 miles 3 days in a row. And they were not being given high carb meals in between. And look at each day that they started their next run, they started right around the same place they ended energy-wise the day before. Because remember, the muscle glycogen is where your muscles are getting energy. So if you end your first 10 miles at this point and you don't replace that glycogen, the next day you're gonna go out and run 10 miles on tired legs and then continue to do that. So if these athletes had replaced their glycogen levels, if they were eating high carb meals every day, 3 meals a day, they would have been able to start that third day, maybe not as high as the first day, but certainly much higher than where they were. True or false? Carbohydrates are fattening. If you want to lose weight, you should limit your intake of bagels, bread, pasta, and potatoes. Any true? It's commonly thought. Any falses? False. It is not true. So carbohydrates are not fattening. What is fattening about foods is that it is the excess calories. So when we think about carbohydrates, we're thinking about breads and rice and pasta and potatoes, right? Those are often easy foods that are very easy to overdo our portion size, right? It's easy to pour a really big bowl of cereal or have a big bowl of pasta with meatballs. Have, let's see, a big Subway sandwich that has more bread than it has meat in it, more bread than it has protein. The foods that we're overdoing are often the carbohydrate foods, and so it's the excess calories that cause weight gain. It's not the carbs. Our bodies don't want to convert carbohydrates to storage fat. It's not an easy conversion. It's not something our bodies want to do. They're much more likely to hold on to the extra calories we're getting from things like butter or oils that are also prevalent on pastas and breads. So those calories tend to be where the weight gain comes from. It's not the carbs. It's not the breads and the pasta. Has anyone ever tried a low-carb diet? Good. I'm impressed. All right, so we're going to move to protein a little bit. Has anyone ever tried to eat a high protein diet? No? That's the one I get the most probably, of patients coming into my office saying, this is what I want to figure out how much protein to get. A lot of our athletes are worried about needing more protein. Am I getting enough? Typically they're getting enough, and by the time they get to my office, often they've tried to go overboard. So we need protein to build muscles, but too much is exactly what the slide I was talking about before. Too much protein is just excess calories. So that can lead to weight gain easier than the excess carbs. So the amount of protein you need to build muscles, a little bit at each meal, a quarter of your plate, or is it the foundation of your meal, 2/3 of your plate? So we're switching to protein. What do you think about how much protein on your plate? A, yeah, a quarter of your plate. So, and I'll show you at the end, actually, let me pull one out. This would be an example of sort of the easier exercise day, where a quarter of your plate would be your protein, a quarter of your plate would be your grains, and then you have fruits and veggies here. Whereas a hard day your protein stays the same. You still need about a quarter of a plate of protein, but what goes way up is your carbs, your grains, your rice, your pasta, your breads, okay? Because you're burning a lot more energy on those hard days, and in order to replace that, you need the carbs. So protein helps you repair muscles, and it helps you build muscles, but in order to go do the exercise that you want to repair your muscles and then build your muscles and then repair them, you need enough carb to get through that hard workout. So to build muscles, you need strength training. So Nautilus exercises, weight resistance training, things like that. Also a certain level of maturity, especially for boys, once there's a certain level of testosterone is when we start to see more muscles built. Too early in life, strength training isn't going to help anyway. It's hormonal and age related as well. We need adequate protein before and after exercise. And then the extra calories are coming from carbs. Again, if you show up in the weight room for a hard weight training session and you haven't had enough carbs, you're going to feel much more tired after the first set than you would if you'd had enough carbs to get through the workout. So remember, the carbs are what's fueling you through the workout. The protein can help you heal after. So this is an example of a day of someone's protein intake. And I do this because I think so many people, especially my male athletes, go toward protein supplements. Do I need protein supplements? And I want to have as much protein as I can get. It's always going to be safer to get from food because you're not going to go overboard or less likely to go overboard. And if you're doing excess calories and protein, again, what is probably missing in your diet if you have too much protein? What do you not have enough of? Carbs. So this is about 100 grams right here of protein. So if we think about a bigger football player, maybe he's 200 pounds, pound for pound, compared to a runner, they need the same amount of protein. He's a bigger guy, so his needs are closer to 140 to 200 grams. Her needs are smaller because she's a smaller person, so she needs somewhere between 70 and 120 grams. So if breakfast is a glass of milk or a yogurt with 8 grams of protein, a slice of toast with peanut butter. So remember, I'm just listing the protein here. The carbs is I'm sort of adding in as I tell you what her day might look like. 2 eggs might be 12 grams of protein. Maybe lunch is a sandwich or a wrap with tuna, 25 grams of protein. And then dinner is chicken or beef or some sort of meat or fish. And that's a big portion of protein, that's 45 grams. 6 ounces would be about the size of my hand. Most of you probably need more like 3 ounces, which is the size of my palm. So that's 100 grams. So that's easily meeting the needs of a smaller female runner and actually well over what she probably needs. And if we had a bigger guy who wanted to get even closer to 200, we can still do it with food. Maybe he's switching to a Greek yogurt that's 16 or 20 grams of protein. 2 slices of peanut butter, 2 slices of toast with peanut butter, it can get you up to 16 or 20 grams. So we can get well over 100 with just food. Okay? Has anyone ever tried protein supplements, the drinks that are on the market or the powders, anything like that? Yeah? Did you stick with it or did you just try it once to see if you liked it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you eating it as a meal replacement or just as a snack? Okay. This would be an example of someone that maybe is a dieting runner, for example. Any athlete could fit there. She is cutting calories, and so she's thinking she's doing a good job by cutting calories, but while cutting calories, she's also cutting protein, and she's cutting carbs. So this is maybe 35 or so grams of protein for her whole day. Her needs are closer to 70, so she needs double this. So by cutting these calories, she's cutting the carbs that are going to help her get through the exercise, but she's also cutting the protein that is going to help her muscles build and then repair after it. So we see often, if you are cutting calories and you're not getting enough, it has to come from somewhere. So you might be losing some weight, but often what your body will do is break down something inside. So maybe it's breaking down fat mass if you have extra, and that's a good thing. But what it also does is break down muscle mass. So if you cut calories too quickly and you're not eating enough protein, we see muscle loss. And that is just detrimental for your performance, and it leads to injuries usually. So making sure you get enough protein if you are cutting down on calories. All right, true or false? You should not eat within the hour before you exercise. True. Depends on the person, really. I mean, I would say it's false. You should eat within the hour. However, I know there's a lot of people who, especially heading into a game or a race, just feel nervous, and those nerves can impact whether you can eat. Performance-wise, you should eat an hour before exercise. But nerves-wise, you sort of have to see what works for you. So in this study, our subjects ate dinner the night before, and then the next day they biked very hard, okay? So half the group was given no breakfast, and they measured their performance level. Half the group was given a 400-calorie breakfast, which might be maybe 2 slices of toast with peanut butter. It might be a big bowl of oatmeal, big bowl of cereal. And those clients got 136 minutes before they hit exhaustion. That's a big difference. It's 27 minutes longer. So let's put this into a real example. Let's say you're at the end of a soccer game and you go to overtime. You have 27 extra minutes before you hit exhaustion than the teammate or the opponent who didn't eat breakfast. So when you're in that last period of whatever game, maybe you're in the last mile of your cross-country race, 27 extra minutes is an enormous amount before you hit the wall of exhaustion compared to someone you're racing against. So breakfast is really important. Does anyone show up at practice or a game without breakfast? I bet you're not the only one. We have 2 hands. Does anyone go to school without breakfast? Yeah. Do you have lunch? You do, okay. Have you ever tried having breakfast to see if you feel better? Or is it like a time? Do you not have enough time? Or you just aren't hungry? You what? Both, time and hunger. Okay. All right. If you want to make some changes, happy to give you some breakfast ideas later, because it is so important, especially if, are you going, so you're skipping breakfast and then you have practice in the afternoon? Yeah. Do you feel really hungry after school?
I just always feel hungry.
You always feel hungry? So you definitely need breakfast then.
Yeah, I need to wake up early.
Yes. Or find something that you can carry with you as you walk out the door.
At school?
Well, yeah, but like, I wake up that late.
Oh, okay.
I get in class like 10 seconds before the bell every day.
At least you're making it worse.
Would you ever make a smoothie and drink it on the way to school? That would require making it probably the night before, having it in the fridge, and grab it on your way out. There's some things we can think about, but I think you should think about adding breakfast. And this is almost the same conversation we're having. If you're low on energy before your afternoon practice, should you have a banana? Should you have more breakfast, more lunch, or all of the above? All of the above. Obviously, in that moment, you can only fix the banana by the time you've gotten to the afternoon practice. You can add the banana. But going forward, if you're hungry before afternoon practice, that tells me you didn't have enough breakfast, you didn't have enough lunch, and you should have an afternoon snack. Not to the point that you feel so full at practice, but to the point that you don't feel low energy as soon as school lets out, like you're craving food. Do you guys, and you know Starbucks is closed right now, but after school, the rush of people to go to Starbucks and grab those sugary drinks, it's because your energy is low, you're so hungry, and our physiological need to have something when you're hungry is sugar. And that's just our body's way of bringing our blood sugars back up. So if your blood sugar is low because you didn't have enough food all day long, consistently too small of breakfast, lunch, and a snack, your blood sugar is low, and your body's saying, I need something. And the quickest way to get it up is sugar. So your body is craving some sort of sugary snack. So it's the worst time of day, I would say, as far as decision making, because when you're that hungry, it's very hard to make a good choice about food, which is why especially our teenagers and little kids we see go right to the really sugary drinks and afternoon snacks. And that's because you didn't eat enough all day long. So your best energy boosters are breakfast and lunch. We're trying to prevent the need for quick energy. We're trying to prevent that low blood sugar that creates that need to go eat something sugary that brings our energy way back up. And then what happens when our sugars are really high is our body sees all that sugar in our body, sends out a bunch of insulin, and then it drops back down. So we spend the day going up and down in our energy instead of a more consistent breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All right, I have one more study. This was looking at breakfast and lunch. Again, same topic. You need to be eating breakfast and lunch. This study looked at poorly fueled athletes biking hard. So they had a baseline group that was, they all biked hard for 45 minutes and sprinted for 15 minutes. So they were trying to mimic a bike race or a cross-country race, and how do you feel the last few minutes? Maybe a soccer game or a hockey game in the third period or second half. So 45 minutes of biking and sprinting for 15 minutes. The baseline group was given no fuel, only water. The second group was given sugar. This study was actually funded by Hershey's, so they were literally just given Hershey Kisses, just 180 calories of sugar. Their performance improved by 10%. The third group was given an energy bar, so a mix of protein and carbs plus water. their performance stayed the same as just the sugar. It was that 180 calories of glucose. So that's really what was making the difference. And then the fourth group was given a meal 4 hours before. So essentially, let's think of it as breakfast, plus the energy bar and water, and their performance improved by 20%. So again, if we're thinking about, you're comparing yourself to the opponent next to you, the person you're racing, the person you're running running down the field against, if you have 20% more energy, that's a huge difference, especially at the end of a game. All coming from breakfast. All right, student athletes who train in the afternoon, breakfast should be 500 to 750 calories, a granola bar, or a high protein breakfast like an egg white omelet for muscular growth. Anyone say A? Yeah, A. It's a big breakfast. Do you guys think any of you eat 500 to 750 calories for breakfast? It'd be a big bowl of granola. It would be maybe a big bowl of cereal with low-fat milk plus fruit on the side. It's a lot of food. And to your point, when you're saying you don't have time, that takes time to sit down and eat 500 plus calories. So we got to figure out ways that you can do it quickly. What about even a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? It doesn't have to be a traditional breakfast. It can be something that's easy to walk to school while you're carrying. Make it on your way out the door. All right, if you're hungry after your afternoon practice, should you have a snack or should you wait until dinner to eat? Have a snack, yes. Remember one of the first studies that I showed you, the groups that were broken into they exercised to the point of exhaustion and then they were either given the high carb diet or the protein and fat. Those athletes who were given the high carb diet, their muscle glycogen repletion rate was the fastest in those first few hours, okay? Even the first hour or two, meaning that the energy is replaced in your muscles within the first hour if you're eating. That's the fastest. Your muscles are ready to replace the energy. If you eat then, you're much more likely to be able to use it and store it than if you're waiting too long. So take advantage of that hour. Right after practice, if you're hungry, take advantage of it and have a high carb snack because you're much more likely to replace the energy in your muscles then than if you wait till dinner, okay? Different than when we as parents are trying to get our toddlers, don't eat dinner yet or don't eat that snack, I'm giving you dinner. For our athletes, it's a totally different situation. If they're hungry after practice, absolutely have a snack. So after practice, as soon as you can, within 30 minutes if you can, it can be a chocolate milk. You're getting a little protein and a great source of carbs. It could be a piece of fruit with a little bit of peanut butter. Then your next meal, remembering they're all going to be high carb meals within the first few hours, and every 2 to 6 hours or so, having a snack. If you're going more than 6 hours without eating, it's too long. Okay, to talk about fluids. Anyone have questions about protein or carbs? Okay. You are dehydrated and will be unable to exercise your best if your urine is dark and concentrated, you don't use the bathroom during the whole school day, or if you feel thirsty, or all of the above. All of the above. Those are all signs of dehydration. If you're not using the bathroom all day, you're not drinking enough. This is sort of the colors of your pee. You want to be up here. If you are not going to the bathroom enough, if you have dark or concentrated urine, if you have a headache or you're fatigued, you're feeling moody, weakness, dizziness, nausea, those are late symptoms of dehydration. I will point out, especially to my female athletes, many of whom are on a multivitamin, multivitamins have iron, which sometimes makes your urine look more like this. So if you are on a multivitamin, that could be the cause of it too. So delaying fatigue. 2 hours before exercise, drink as much as you can. It takes about 45 to 60 minutes for fluid to work its way through you, meaning you can use the restroom before practice or a game. So 2 hours before a game, you should be drinking a lot. 15 minutes before you exercise, as tolerated. How much can your body take without having it sloshing around? Probably depends a little bit on your sport. If you're running, you certainly don't want water sloshing in your stomach. Just depends on what you're doing. This one also depends. Every 15 minutes during. If you're running a cross-country race, you might not be carrying water to fuel every 15 minutes. Whereas if you're playing a hockey game and you're on and off the bench every 2 minutes, you might be taking sips of water every couple minutes versus drinking 6 ounces every 15 minutes. So see what works with your sport and what your stomach can handle. After exercise until your urine is pale, and daily enough that you're using the bathroom every 2 to 4 hours. Okay? True or false? A sports drink like Gatorade is a good way for student athletes to replace electrolytes lost in lost in sweat. It's actually false. So Gatorade and Powerade have about 100 milligrams of salt. When I say salt, I'm talking about sodium. So to put that in perspective, a pound of sweat loss is somewhere between 400 and 700 milligrams of sodium, okay? Gatorade's only 100. If you're exercising for an hour, you might lose upwards of 2,000 milligrams of sodium. And then you're gonna replace it with 100 milligrams from a Gatorade. It's not enough. It can certainly help replete your fluid. You can get more fluid that way, but it's not gonna help with the sodium. So if you're a heavy sweater and you know you're losing a lot of salt, and those sweaters are the ones who you can see like the white along their forehead when sweat dries, that's somebody who's losing a lot of salt. And if you know you're one of those people, you need more sodium after. So 2 slices of pizza can replace 1,000 milligrams of salt or sodium, whereas a Gatorade is only gonna give you 100. So I'm not saying you can't have Gatorade. It's not a bad product, but that is not the best way to replace your salt or your sodium. Food is always gonna get you there much faster. But if you are dehydrated and you know you're gonna drink more if it tastes good, like a Gatorade, it's definitely a good way to help replace your fluid. This goes back to a little bit what I was talking about, the dieting athlete, where the less you weigh, the better you'll perform. There is no research that is supporting this trend of being lighter means that you're a better athlete. What we do know is that when you're cutting calories, like I said before, you're also cutting carbs and protein. So if you're cutting carbs, you don't have enough energy to get through your exercise. If you're cutting protein, you're probably losing muscle mass. So this is a picture of a runner who probably lost too much muscle in the process of losing weight. But we do know that if you're losing muscle mass and you don't have the carbs to get you through the practice, most likely your performance is going to decline versus improve. And there's really no data behind weight loss improving performance. The best athlete is a well-fueled, well-trained, and I do like to point out genetically gifted. A lot of this comes down to genetics as well. I mean, this runner right here, she didn't make the Olympics just because she ate the right way and trained really hard. She also had genetics behind her. So something else to always keep in mind. All right, these last 3, and then I'll show you what a picture of a day. I add this in because sugar comes up so much. Sugar in our media is so, it's talked about so much in a negative way, as in you need to cut out the sugar, avoid all sugar. Carbohydrates turn into sugar. Our body doesn't really know the difference. Did the sugar come from a white bread or a whole wheat bread or a Skittle? It still ends up sugar. What happens though is that if you're having a whole wheat bread that also has fiber, it's gonna help fill you up. So there are better benefits of certain carbohydrates, but sugar ends up being sugar. And it is not addictive the way a drug might be. If we think we're craving sugar, often you're just hungry. Maybe your blood sugar is getting low. And again, the physiological way we get our blood sugar up is by eating sugar. So hunger itself triggers cravings for sugary food. So that's where sometimes people say, I crave it, I need it all day long. It's because you're not eating enough calories during the day to help keep those cravings down. And again, it's sugar fattening. Excess calories, again, are the ways that we're gaining weight. Sugar often comes with fat, so things like ice cream and cookies, and it's easy to overeat those more sugary items. So that's where the weight gain is coming from. It's not from the sugar itself. A fit athlete is going to preferentially metabolize carbs. That means use the carbs for energy and turn them into muscle fuel versus the protein. And just some healthy snack ideas for an athlete. These are great things to bring with you on the bus if you're going to a game. Some of them obviously need some sort of cooler or lunchbox. And some of them are easy to just travel anywhere. And this is what a day looks like. Oh, I also say, this information all comes from Nancy Clark's nutrition guidebook. She's a well-known sports dietitian. She's local to Massachusetts, and her website has some great information. And this is an example of a day in the life. So this is about 450 grams of carb, which I'm guessing many of you don't get this much carbohydrate in your day. It's every single meal and snack is about 40 to, or probably 50% of the meal is carbohydrate. So it's quite a bit, and it's consistent all day long. So if this person took one meal off where it was lower carb or one snack where they didn't have carbs, it's hard to make that up later. Every meal and snack needs it. Any questions? Anything surprise you guys? Did you think I was going to talk about something else? Did you think I'd say stop eating sugar? Yeah?
I guess I'm like kind of shocked with the carbs thing. It's like my parents are always like, carbs make you fat. Like, don't eat carbs.
That's because that's what our media is telling us. The world is trying to tell people that carbs are fattening, and they are not. And I'm not saying every human should eat this way. This is a lot of carbohydrates. So not everybody needs to eat this way because it's not going to lead to weight loss. So if somebody is trying to lose weight, this isn't going to lead to weight loss. This is going to lead to better performance as an athlete specifically. But generally, low-carb diets don't usually work, and they're not usually sustainable. They're hard to keep up with. Yeah?
So you'd say for like a pre-workout snack, you prioritize carbs?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the best snack is going to have a little bit of both. If your stomach can only handle one thing and it's carbs, that's your best bet. Yeah. Yeah?
Can I take creatine?
I would not. What are you taking it for? Are you trying to build muscle? So again, the best way to build muscle is be doing the exercises, being a certain age where your testosterone gets to a certain point, and that's just a little bit different for every person. And if you're taking creatine, oftentimes you are not getting enough of something else, which is usually the carbohydrate, which means when you get to that exercise, that workout of the day, you're already low on energy, and you're not going to be able to lift as much during those sets as you would if you had enough carb. Yeah?
Is like a gallon a day of water an actual thing?
That's a lot, but then that depends on the person. I had a patient this week who told me she drinks almost 2 gallons of water a day. And she must be in the bathroom all day long. So it depends on the person. Everybody's needs are a little bit different. I think it's a little bit of figuring out what works for you. If you think that you're sweating a lot, one thing you can do is you can weigh yourself before a workout, weigh yourself after, and the difference that you've lost there is water. So you'll have a sense of how much you've lost and what you need to replace. And if you want, I can give you a better understanding of how to do that at some point. But a gallon, depends. What color is your urine? Is it really clear? I'm sure you don't want to share that with all of us. But that's probably the easiest way to get a sense of whether you're dehydrated, is to watch the color of your urine. Yeah? Mm-hmm. A lot of carb sources also have protein. So you can be finding the higher protein breads, rice, pastas, because that way you're getting, instead of 1 or 2 grams of protein in a pasta, you can find some of those high protein pastas that are 7 or 8 grams. So that starts to add up over the course of the day. Nuts and beans are great, like peanut butter. Do you do dairy? Okay. Greek yogurts and string cheese. For you especially, it's harder to get one big source of protein. For you especially, it's important that you're having protein every meal and snack so that all day long it starts to add up. Because if you go a few meals without it, it's going to be hard at dinner time to get that 60 to 80 grams that you probably need. Yeah?
If you're like a consistently hungry person after like your practices or whatever,
Yeah?
is it okay to be having like 4 meals a day or 5 meals?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say you guys, some of you are probably eating 6 times a day, or maybe 5 if you're doing 3 meals and 2 snacks. Absolutely. If you're hungry, have a snack. Yeah. Yeah. It can be, yes. It can be in your mind for sure that you're thinking to yourself, it's like a food that you're always thinking of. And sometimes I think that's twofold. I think some of it is, are you telling yourself, I can't have that or I shouldn't have that? And then it becomes a food that we think about a lot. Or are you just not eating enough and you really are hungry? And so the first thing you're thinking of when you're not eating enough tends to be sugary things. But you're right, it can be in our brains as well. It's not just physical hunger. Yeah?
Is there a certain time of day we should stop eating, like midnight snacks, for example? Is that not good for a kid?
Especially for athletes, if they're hungry, they should be eating something. I would say the only thing is that often if it's a midnight snack, it's probably like the mindless snacking or the eating because they're awake still, not because they need it. But if they're hungry, there's not a time to stop. Anything else?
Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
more about the protein drinks or the substitute
Mm-hmm.
of meals?
You mean thinking about because they don't have time to make or have a meal?
Might be cutting the calories. Do protein drinks typically have carbs in them or no?
A protein drink usually is going to have somewhere under 15 grams of carb. So for an example, like this lunch right here, a normal lunch would have maybe 100 grams of carb, somewhere around there. A protein drink is probably going to have 10 to 15 grams. Some of them are even as low as 5. So it's nowhere near enough carbs to replace a meal. It's probably very high protein. Some of them have a little bit of fat. But if it's something that your kid likes and they're drinking it partly because they like it and it's easy, mixing or adding that with like a big piece of fruit or a big serving of fruit on the side is a way to up the carbs and still get that really easy meal. So they in and of themselves are not bad for you. It's often that when you have that, something is missing. Well, thank you guys. You're a great audience.